What's going on, everybody? Today's video is going to be about what is Gundam, what is Gunpla, what is all this stuff, what are grades, and what is all this nonsense. As an American, you may not be very familiar with Gundam, and that's fine. Today, though, we're gonna explore the topic a little bit, and I'm going to do my best to give you as layman's terms of an introduction to it as possible. So I'm going to start off with what is Gundam. Gundam is probably best described as the Japanese equivalent of Star Wars. It's just as popular culturally in Japan as Star Wars is here. It's just as old. Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam came out in 1979, I believe, and Star Wars A New Hope released in 1977 in America here. And both of them are insanely popular and influential. I mean, the last time you went to a store, how many Star Wars toys did you see? Probably tons. You've got Kylo Ren and Stormtroopers and Rey and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon and Boba Fett and the Mandalorian now. Gundam is just as varied and just as popular in Japan, with a ton of different series, a ton of different movies, and a ton of different toys. And that brings us to what is Gunpla. Well, Gunpla, in short, is Gundam Plastic Model Kit. It derives from a term called Plamo, which is just plastic model kit, and that's what these are. They're plastic model kits. They're not necessarily toys, but you can play with them a little bit to an extent, as long as you're careful. They are model kits, so they can fall apart on you, but they're not necessarily toys. This is a hobbyist sort of interest here. So that's Gundam and that's Gunpla. Breaking into that, what are the grades of Gunpla? Well, there's many different grades of Gunpla. What I have here that I'm going to show you today is 4 grades that I think are probably the most common that you'll run across as just a cursory glance at the hobby. There's plenty here that I don't have represented in this video. You have non-grades, you have first grades, you have entry grades. I think, though, in terms of shopping around online, the selection I have here is more commonly what you're going to run into. So to start things off here, I have the high grade Leo from Gundam Wing. Now, how can you tell it's a high grade? Well, you have the big HG on the box there, and that will be present somewhere on any high grade model kit. That is how you can tell it is a high grade. Sometimes there's colors that represent this, but you will always see the HG on a high grade kit. Now, what does high grade mean? High grade is a general sort of entry level model kit. I mean, you have entry grade now, but that only came out, I think, very late last year, and I think there's only one model kit in that line so far. But from what I hear, it's very good. But more commonly than not, you're going to run into the high grades, and the high grades represent a perfect entry level Gundam model kit. And they're not always Gundams, as you can see here. The Leo is just a mobile suit. What separates a Gundam from a mobile suit is a little murky sometimes. Depending on the series, they might explain it as the Gundams are built from Gundarium alloy or some sort of plot device like that. But generally, it's just the kind of throwaway version of one of these big robots are generally the mobile suits. Although every Gundam is still a mobile suit, but the Gundams are just kind of like the main character ones, and they have a very distinct look most of the time. The mobile suits generally tend to have a very militaristic, utilitarian look to them. Some of them have a little more personality than others. The Leo, as you can see from the box art there, is meant to just be, you know, your standard infantry sort of mobile suit. You might be looking at this and thinking, was that just a guy in armor there, like Master Chief or something like that? No. Gundams and mobile suits are very large robots, and the pilot sits in a little cockpit in there, sometimes in the head, sometimes in the waist, most of the time in the torso there, though. These things in the anime are meant to be like 60 feet tall, give or take. And so high grades, all the grades have a scale to them, high grade being 1/144th. So it's just 1/144th of what this theoretical 60-foot tall robot is. What does that translate to? You know, and this is one of those embarrassing times where I don't have like a tape measure or a ruler or something, so I had to do the American way of like, well, it's 2 chicken eggs or whatever, you know. But so it's a little bit shorter than just a regular Sharpie, because I'm a dummy and I don't have a ruler here. So we'll roughly say 6 inches, 5.5 inches, somewhere in that range. Most of the high grades are going to fall. Some of them are much larger. Some of them are just a tad smaller. These scales are meant to represent the mobile suits themselves in the shows. So in the shows, you know, between maybe Gundam Wing or Gundam 00, maybe there's a size difference, right? Maybe the Gundam is maybe the Leo is shorter than what the Exia would be, or whatever, right? But generally speaking, the model kits tend to be around that size for this grade. High grades are, like I said, a really good entry-level point, mostly in terms of price. I got the Leo here for like $11, which I think is super reasonable. With the addition, I had to buy extra some nippers, which you will absolutely need to get into this hobby, and that's basically the only tool you'll need to get into this hobby. In terms of, you know, maybe you want to detail it up a little bit, you can get into things like panel lining, and that's just a marker, and it was like $3. The nippers you can get for about $5 or $7. So I mean, for 18-20 bucks, you can be fully ready to just build one of these things up and go from there. You don't have to paint them. You don't need to glue them. You certainly can paint them if you want to come up with whatever look and color scheme you want, but it's not a requisite. You don't have to. And this sometimes gets the scale model guys a little irritated because they absolutely have to paint theirs, and they get a little upset with the Gundam guys because they think it's a little lazy, and I can totally agree with them on that. But the things that we can do with both Gundams and the scale models in terms of paint applications and details and things like that are absolutely mind-blowing. I would say more so in the scale model world with the tanks and airplanes and cars and stuff like that. The levels that those guys can get into is just unreal. Same thing with the Gundams, but we have a little bit of an advantage where we don't have to glue. We don't have to paint, and it still looks pretty decent. So for not a lot of money, you can jump into the high-grade line anywhere and feel pretty confident that you've got something that you can manage to do. They're not super complicated. They're not very difficult to build at all. You can probably crack out a high-grade kit in a couple hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours, depending on, you know, how mechanically inclined you are. The instructions are always in Japanese, but they're, you know, pictures and numbers and letters and stuff that's really easy to follow. You don't have to know Japanese to build one of these things. I've built over 60 of them now. I don't know a lick of Japanese. So you don't have to. They're very easy to build. My son built one of these, specifically one of the Leos. He was 6 at the time. So you can do it. Anybody can do it. And the high grade is a perfect jumping point to get into Gundam. Moving on from that, you have a slightly better option with the real grades. Now, Real Grade is one of the newest line of Gundam model kits by Bandai. The Real Grade takes the scale, it's the same scale as the high grades with the 1/144th, but you get features from a master grade. And I'll talk about master grades in a second here, but you get detail and articulation and posability and accessories and all sorts of features that you would definitely associate more with master grade, but in this small little package. And I have to say, I've built maybe 4 or 5 of the Real Grades so far, and they are quickly becoming a favorite of mine. Yeah, they're still pretty small, and if you've got, you know, fat sausage fingers like me, that can be a little difficult at times, but it's not impossible. You can definitely do it, and they're super enjoyable. And in some cases, especially with the 2 examples I have in front of me here, the Real Grade can be much better than its master grade counterpart. And there's not a huge difference in the money there, but for a kit that, yeah, maybe it's smaller, but it's built like a rock. It is so sturdy. Rock was probably a poor example to use, but they are so sturdy. All the Real Grades that I've built so far are so sturdy. They're so articulated. The level of detail that's in these tiny little kits, for one, it blows the high grades right out of the water. But in this particular case here with the Exia, it blows the master grade out of the water even. And I think that's what Bandai was trying to do. They want to give you a sort of mini master grade experience. Now, high grade and master grade existed first, before Real Grade. So there was a much larger gap in quality of these kits before Real Grade came out. And the Real Grade line bridges that gap so perfectly. Now, the downside to this, not necessarily a downside, it's sort of understandable once I get into it, is the pricing. A Real Grade kit is going to cost you 1.5 to 2 times what a high grade would, which puts it, I mean, knocking at the door of master grade pricing sometimes. So it can be a little difficult to choose whether or not Real Grade is right for you. But I will say that I highly recommend it, even for entry level. You know, first, maybe in, you know, your first 5 kits, make one of them a Real Grade. It's a very enjoyable experience. The decals, the accessories, all the stuff that they come with, and all the articulation and detail packed in to this tiny little model kit is going to be a very enjoyable experience for you, especially once you complete it. They're just a blast. So that's Real Grade. They're awesome little kits. Moving on here, we have Master Grade. No, I forgot to note, but I think it might be pretty obvious though, that Real Grades will always have the RG somewhere on their box. All of these kits will have their grade labeled on the box somewhere to signify that, yes, this is a Real Grade or a high grade, or in this case, pan up a little bit, a Master Grade, as signified by the MG up in the corner there. Now this is the Master Grade version of that same model kit, right? So we have the Exia in both Real Grade and Master Grade. And of the two, what do I recommend? By a landslide, the Real Grade. Absolutely. The Master Grade of this kit is just a hand grenade. I can't even touch it sometimes without little armor pieces falling off, and it is just a pain. It looks awesome though. The Exia is a super cool looking Gundam, and I just love the look of it, so I had to get the Master Grade. And then I was like, oh, Real Grade, well, they're a little small, right? And that's, like I said, if you've got, you know, big fat fingers like I do, you're gonna want to work with these bigger kits because, for one, they're just huge. I mean, look at it compared to the Real Grade there. And again, for size comparison, here's my handy dandy Sharpie there. You can see it's quite a bit bigger than a regular Sharpie. So they're very easy to work with. Generally speaking, they're fairly articulated. The The newest versions or the newer versions of any of these grades, whether it's high grade, real grade, master grade, whatever, the newer they are, the better they are, generally speaking, in terms of the technology inside for the movement and articulation. They just get better and better. Some of the older kits, this Exia came out in 2009, so it's older and it shows. A lot of the technology holding it together is really old and really weak, especially in the feet. It's very hard to even make this one stand, and as you can see, it only has its shield on there because if I have the sword on it, it's just going to fall. It's going to fall right over. It's going to fall apart. Some of these are bad. That's why, though, in addition to just, explaining to you what these grades are, do your homework, right? If you're interested in this and you want to get one of these things or several of these things to get into the hobby, there's plenty of folks on YouTube that all they do is review these. They build them and they let you know whether it's garbage or whether it's not. You can be like me and watch those videos and still buy the kit because you like it and you're gonna figure it out and deal with it as you go. There are ways to make things better with gluing and whatnot to help the joints out, and sometimes they'll loosen up over time. But they're you can get away from that, or you can remedy that, I guess, rather. But for a general price range of about $40 to $60 for most master grade kits, the idea of having to fix it just to make it stand might be a big turnoff, and they can definitely understand that. And not all of them are like this. There are plenty and plenty and plenty of master grade kits that are phenomenal. The Exia just isn't one of them, but I had him standing here already because I was going to do another video with the real grade Exia, so I figured, well, might as well toss him in there as just my master grade look at the grade scale of Gunpla. So the pros of master grades are, first and foremost, the size. They generally run about 8 inches tall. The scale is 1/100th, so that's how you're going to generally speaking tell that the kit, as long as it's Gundam, 1/100th in a different series is a whole different can of worms there. But in terms of Gundam, 1/100th is about this 8-inch, 7.5-inch range. Sometimes bigger, sometimes a little bit smaller. But generally speaking, that's what you're going to get with the 1/100th master grade kits. There are other kits like I said that I don't have here, like the full mechanics 1/100th, or sometimes even a high grade 1/100th back from the 90s. They're still around this size. It just matters in terms of the articulation and posability and stuff like that. Underneath all these white armor segments is like a full frame that sits underneath there that you put all these armor segments onto, versus a high grade, you don't have that. They're just, the leg is just the 2 pieces of plastic put together. But the master grade, if you've built a couple high grades or real grades and you want to get into something large to display or put on your shelf or whatever, master grade is a great level to get into. They aren't that much more difficult. And that's the other thing too about all these grades, is the difficulty. It's marginally increasing. It's not so much so that you won't be able to do it. It's just bigger, a little more complex the higher up you go on this scale. Now lastly, I'm going to see if I can even get him all the way in frame, is you have perfect grade. Perfect grade Gundams are the tippy top when it comes to Gunpla. He's so tall, I can't even fit him in the frame there. A lot of these are really old. They only come out with a perfect grade maybe once a year or so. The technology involved in these things is ridiculous. The level of detail is insane with perfect grades. There are so many little hatches and vents all over the mobile suit there, or Gundam, as you can see on the box there, that are just beyond belief. I would say perfect grade, though, is probably the most niche grade to get into. Excuse me. Now, I'm going to freehand it a little bit. Now, with perfect grade, there is no big PG or anything. They always just say perfect grade on there. This kit is kind of a 2-in-1. So, as I have it built, it is the GPO-1, but on the box there you see that it can also be the GPO-2. All the parts to make it that are in the box, but it took me probably a good week and a half just to get that thing built, and I was pretty much burnt out after that. I didn't want to do anything more, so I kind of left it how it is. Plus, I really like the look of the GPO-1 anyways. Let's talk about the downsides, though, of perfect grade. First and foremost, it is the price. This kit alone cost me $235, give or take. Prices will vary with popularity or age or availability, right? Maybe this same kit in 2 more years, because it's an older kit, maybe it'll run $300-400. I don't know. But at the time that I bought it last year, it was $235. Approximately. I don't remember for sure. But these are the model kits that you will most commonly run into if you start searching them online. You're going to get high grade, real grade, master grade, or perfect grade. Now, to recap again, the scales of those, and I didn't even mention it yet for the perfect grade. I will in just a second here. You've got 1/144th for high grade and real grade. So you can go about that in a couple ways, right? You go to an online store specifically that sells Gunpla, and they're going to have all sorts of selections already laid out for you. But if you can only remember one thing to type into that search bar, you can type in HG or 1/144, and that's going to pull up all the high grade Gundams, or all the Gundams that are that scale. Maybe they're entry grade, or maybe they're non-grade or something like that, but they're all going to be in that scale, and it's going to pull up all those options. Master grade, 1/100th scale. Type that in. Everything that's that size, as long as it's Gundam, it will be that size, will pop up for you, and you can find whichever one you want to buy. Perfect grade is 1/60th scale. So as you can see there, I mean, he's quite large. We'll do the old Sharpie thing just to show you, but this is going to probably come up to his knees. Not even. So the perfect grades are massive, and if you just want something that is going to dominate your shelf, I think I might have said master grade. If you want something that's just going to dominate your shelf, the perfect grade is, well, it's perfect. In terms of articulation and stuff, though, these are usually older, and they're not known for their posability or articulation. Most of the time, they're just going to be standing there like this. Despite the incredibly high level of articulation that's inside of these things, the weight of them is just a bit much to support itself. And sometimes the legs and waist and feet get a little loose on you, but I think that's just with age. And you could definitely work that out and make it better, but like I said, it already took me like a week to build that thing, so I definitely wasn't in the mood to strengthen the joints and whatnot. But there are some, like I said, the hands, for instance, are completely articulated. Each finger moves separately, the thumb moves. That's really cool. There's all sorts of little hatches and vents and stuff that open up for extra little detail on there. The cockpit opens. There's little pilots that come with that for, actually, perfect grade, master grade, and real grade. You get all sorts of little pilot figures, and so that's cool. There's some light up gimmicks on the perfect grades for the cameras and the eyes. Those are pretty cool. But it's, like I said, it's perfect grade is definitely a niche level of Gunpla that you got to really commit if you want to get one of those. But in terms of what you're searching online, these Gundams are probably what you're going to run into. Not these specific ones, but high grade, real grade, master grade, perfect grade. These are going to be the ones that you're going to be bombarded with online to choose from. What you choose is up to you. But I wanted to give you a little bit of overview of what to expect, what to look for, what to maybe be interested in. I mean, that's up to you, I suppose, but just to even know that these things exist, right? I had to do this all kind of on my own. I mean, people review these things, but I'm the kind of person that I really like to do it myself. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you can probably relate to that too, right? So you're going to make your own choices on this, but I think it is helpful a little bit to just kind of get the word out there. Hey, this is what this is what that is. You know, there's a ton of guys that also echo these things online, and they have way bigger channels than me, and that is absolutely fine. Knowledge is power, and the more of it that you have, the more informed you are. The more informed you are, the better choices you can make. So it doesn't hurt to have one more voice kind of breaking this all down for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I get a little windy, and I can go on for quite a while, but I definitely appreciate you sticking around for this. I know it's been a little while since I uploaded. We're gonna get that taken care of. I'm gonna film a little more regularly. But I just want to, after a conversation with a couple people, they were asking just what is this exactly? I figured I'd break it down a little bit and talk about it for you. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. I certainly hope you get into the hobby. This is an awesome hobby, and not just Gundams. I mean, you know, you want to build the Star Wars stuff. You can certainly do that, and it is just as good. Especially if it's by Bandai. Bandai does the Star Wars stuff too, and it's the same level of quality as the Gunpla is. So you're not going to be disappointed in how it looks. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get out there and do something. I mean, it doesn't have to be the Gundam stuff, but you know, do something new for you. You know, get out there and experience it. And if it happens to be this sort of thing, it happens to be this sort of thing. It's a very calming hobby to get into. You just sit down, put some music on, start cranking these out. You know, it's very relaxing. So that's it for now. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for supporting the channel. I appreciate every view, every person that comes in and listens to me yap and yap for half an hour at a time. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. I appreciate you for watching this. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time.